mothers who have had children as though they are voluntary mothers. It's actually cases of sexual abuse. It is presumed anybody below 17 years who has a child is a victim of sexual abuse because they cannot consent legally to sex. So we are actually talking about an abused child in this bill.
Thank you very much. I know, Honorable Millie, we've been in the trenches together with Cradle, fighting for the girl child and abused children. So I understand where you're coming from. I will also allow the member, and I think the member for Baringo is properly informed. I will allow the member from Mombasa, Honorable Zamzam Chimba.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika, na mimi niweze kuunga mkono hii bill ambayo mwenzangu ameleta ya kupatia watoto wa kike nafasi ya pili kusoma. Mheshimiwa Spika, Mheshimiwa Spika, na nilitaka sana kuzungumza kuwa hawa watoto ambao wanapewa nafasi ya pili wengi wako ile underage, umri wa chini, walipata ujauzito, pengine walinajisiwa, ama pengine kuna wale ambao walikuwa na forced marriages, walikuwa hawana uwezo, kwa hiyo wanapewa nafasi ya pili kupata masomo. Mheshimiwa Spika, Mheshimiwa Spika, ndani ya Mombasa County kama mama county nimeregesha watoto wa kike 350 na walipia full scholarship na ngafu warudi darasani wasome, kwa sababu Mheshimiwa Spika, sisi tunataka uongozi wa mwanamke, lakini uongozi wa mwanamke una matatizo mengi sana. Mpaka afikie kiwango cha kuweza kuingia katika uongozi lazima awe amepata elimu ya kutosha. Mheshimiwa Spika, na utapata wakati mwingi Mheshimiwa Spika, mtoto wa kiume ambaye amempa mtoto wa kike ujauzito, yeye anaendelea na masomo yake, mtoto wa kike anabaki nyumbani. Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi nimewapa wale watoto nafasi. Mheshimiwa Spika, mpaka sasa mwaka huu watoto ambao wamemaliza kidato cha 4 na watoto 21. Niko na wengine ambao wako form 1, form 2, form 3 na wanaendelea vizuri, na wengine wameungama, wengine hata walikuwa wameingia kwenye madawa ya kulevya kwa sababu ya stress. Anashindwa, angalie mtoto anatamani apate elimu ili aweze kupata kazi, amekwama. Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa hiyo mimi kitu ambacho nataka kusema ni kweli hii bill inahitaji pesa. Ikiwa kama watataka watoto wapewe sehemu ya kulelewa shuleni, basi lazima kuwe na mpango ambao serikali itawekeza pesa ya kuangalia hizi sehemu ambazo watoto watalelewa. Lakini kwa ufupi Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi naunga mtoto wa kike ama young mother aweze kuregeshwa shuleni ikiwa bado ana tamaa ya elimu. Na mimi katika wale wa mama ambao wana hawa watoto, kwa sababu mpaka sasa hatuna sehemu za kuweka watoto wao shuleni, nimewaeka hawa kina mama pamoja ambao ni mama wa hawa young mothers. Nimewapa mradi mtaji, wanafanya biashara, waweze kulea hawa watoto na hawa wenzao wakisoma. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi naunga mkono, japokuwa na mashtaka moja Mheshimiwa Spika. Hata ino bili ino mimi nimeitoa kitambo, nimeweka kule katika nimetable pale katika sehemu ya kuweka bills, mpaka sasa haijakuja Mheshimiwa Spika. Lakini yangu ilikuwa na sehemu nzuri ambazo wamekuwa wakiuliza, kwa sababu nilijua kwa dhati kuwa hino lazima itakuwa ni money bill, lazima itahitaji mapendi, itahitaji funding. Na ya kusikitisha hata zaidi Mheshimiwa Spika, hao watoto wengine wamepata ujauzito kwa sababu wengine walikosa sodo. Mtoto amedanganywa na mandazi, akajua nitapata 100 kununua sodo niondoe aibu, mara akienda kukutana na huyo mwanaume anapata ujauzito. Na mpaka sasa mimi nasikitika, sodo za Mombasa pia bado hazijafika, licha ya kuwa mama county najibidiisha kuregesha hawa watoto shuleni. Lakini nina wasiwasi mimba watazidi kupata mimba kwa ukosefu wa sodo Mheshimiwa Spika. Na sisi tuko pamoja, hata wewe pia ni mama county, umeona tunalalamika. Tunaomba wale ambao wamepewa nafasi ya kutuletea sodo katika counties zetu waweze kuzileta ili tuweze kutoa kwa watoto. Lakini namuunga mkono, na mimi nina yangu ambao ni nzuri sana naileta, ambayo tutaweza kuijadili, iko na vitengo tofauti. Hino ni money bill na inahitaji mgao ili iweze kusaidia. Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika.
Asante sana. The Honorable Member for Seme, Honorable James Nyikau. I can see you're on the intervention.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is a very interesting bill. Whereas in principle, this bill is actually very important for the girl child, the support of the girl child. But there are very basic issues about this bill, and some of them have been raised, that actually, when I saw it, the first thing, it is a money bill. Also, this bill is actually going to interact with very many other acts of parliament. And therefore, I've gone through and I've not seen how you're putting transition clauses that will raise those issues. Other than that, Madam Speaker, it is an important bill because what we are really dealing with here, we are dealing with adolescent pregnancy. And we are actually dealing with a biological problem in the context of a society that is changing. That is the problem before us. There is increasing early puberty in children, both boys and girls. And therefore, there is increased sexual activity very early. And with the liberal upbringing and even the liberal provisions even in our laws that are protective, it therefore brings this as a big problem. Therefore, it is actually necessary to address that. Girls get into pubescent very early. Menarche comes extremely early. And when there is menarche, they start seeing periods, they are actually ovulating. And therefore, they are capable of getting pregnant. And yet, they are still children. And with the empowerment of the girl child we have brought, there's a freedom that has come. And as a society, are we taking care of that? That is what some members are actually raising, that how shall we deal with the psychological orientation, the traditional orientation, the cultural orientation? That is actually where we start. Because if we take a strict legal definition, then anybody below 18 is a child. And if the law was nature, then they shouldn't get pregnant. But the law is not nature. So we are dealing with a legal situation against a biological situation. And these children will actually need a lot of psychological support, even if before we start thinking of education. And if they get pregnant, the impact is huge, both physiologically, physically, mentally, and even in their development, because some of them actually get pregnant before maturity of their organs. That's a big problem. So, and if you look at development, the greatest developmental impact will be on the education. They cannot go on with education. And I think this is where this bill is camping. On that aspect, I support that we should find a way that these children will go back to school. But then we come and talking of their protection. You are actually now protecting two children. The mother is a child, the baby is a child. And we are now also bringing in centers that have been created. And if you look at what is we are indicating in the center, we are even talking of children, these children giving birth at the centers. So that center becomes an extremely complex center that we are dealing with. So, Madam Speaker, in terms of education, I think the most important thing that we are actually addressing, and we look at this, is how do they get to school? What psychological support do they need when they go to school? What physical support? And the support of the baby, because some of them will come from families that are actually so disadvantaged, they can't look after a baby that is left behind. We are saying in this bill that can also be done at the centers. So if you look at this center is complex, it's huge. And how are we going to set it up without money? And therefore, this must be first and foremost looked at as a money bill. So this bill, in my view, we really need to relook at it. I support it in principle, but as set out now, I think if passed as it is, I think it will give us a lot of problems in its handling. So my view, I'll say, is that we need to relook at this bill, whether we withdraw it and bring it again, whether we look at it in a much more broader sense. But as it is, it's a good principle. is something we should pursue, but not as it is now. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. The Honorable Member for Kibra, Honorable Peter Arero.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to add my voice on this bill. And I think all the bills which come to this House should always pass through the Budget Committee. And when they pass through the Budget Committee, we have them either designated as money bill or not money bill. But what is most important is about how it is assumed that under 17 years is a child. I support this based on our current law. I remember, but culturally, when we were young, like myself, my mother was married at 17 years. And see how healthy I am. She gave birth to 7 healthy men and 3 healthy ladies. So, just as my colleague Dr. here is talking about 2 children, sometimes our culture makes our young girls to be married under our cultural norms. I would know where you come from. Sometimes the Wazees will always say that their daughters be married because of certain circumstances. But in the eyes of the law, I know that it is assumed that anybody under 18 is a girl, a child. But I support the bill because it is going to enrich our cultural values. It is going to enrich our society and will take care of our young girls. Otherwise, I support the bill.
Honorable Member for Dagoretti, I can see you on the intervention button.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, while I know this is a bill that every woman will support and ensure that indeed there's protection and care of every child, and the challenges we have faced, Madam Speaker, so much in issues of children today, that you find today, I'll give you a story, Madam Speaker. Just recently, there's a girl who went to the Swedish embassy. She's supposed to travel to Sweden. But because since she was born, she has never communicated to the father or anything, the parent was told that they need the father's consent. Or she goes to court and the mother to file a sole custody of the child. So you realize in such things, you need now the law to be very clear, especially for Kenyan children, because we can't also enforce parents or husbands when they leave their wives that you need to fight. And this sometimes can bring trauma to a child. So, Madam Speaker, when I talk about the care and protection of a child parents bill, it's a bill that will assist in many things, because the law internationally comes out, and within the Children's Act, we also have that protection. As they say, it might be a money bill or not a money bill, but I think it will be a money bill because there are some issues that will come out and will be raised. So that, Madam Speaker, also we have to look at it. But this is a very important bill that every woman in this House must support this bill, because it's going to help very many families that are finding themselves in this challenge. And also you find that children who are in orphanages, Madam Speaker. So a child has lived in an orphanage, let's say her whole or his whole life. But then you realize when they come to the age of 17, they will want to now start, what's my identity? And those are some of the things we are saying. As you bring in care, both parents must agree. And if a child will also come out and say, I have never seen you as a father or a mother, and they decide the parent that has taken care of her is that parent that has taken care of, Madam Speaker, then I'm hoping in the bill, we are also trying to ensure we are safeguarding such children. That yes, you have a biological parent, but that parent never bothered about you. And so you went and found a foster parent who has taken care of you as a parent. In fact, nobody even knows whether this is your parent or not your parent. That is what the bill should be also addressing, because we have very many children today who are in that scenario. Madam Speaker, this Senate bill, co-sponsored by Beatrice Kemei, is also a bill that needs now to look at the different laws that we have for children, and so that we don't find ourselves having an overlap. So when you go to court, the judge is supposed to read the Children's Act, but to remember always the Constitution now takes present, and you have to ensure it's the principal law. And so how do we ensure we don't find ourselves in a court where now you have to quote so many laws for children to get their rights? So I think as we debated, it will be very important for us to also look at those amendments and see whether we can bring in our own amendments also to enrich the bill more, so that it takes care. If we are taking care and protection, then it protects the child. How do we ensure also it protects a child who is a minor but has also gone through a lot and is now in a juvenile court and needs assistance? Because I've realized, and I'll give an example, even though he's beyond a minor, this young man who just decided to beat a policeman. But nobody questioned whether this young man has had his own trauma, has gone through a lot, is a child either who has a single parent and is unable to understand what he's going through. But we cascade, and it's something we are doing very much to many children today as they grow, and they are becoming more radical and more aggressive in their lives to protect themselves. So as we talk of care and protection of a child, we must also address the issues of parents in that, and that if indeed a parent at a point that you have not stayed with your child for more than 10 years, then you can't just walk into this life and say, now you have arrived. There must be a process. That process has to be well stipulated within the bill, Madam Speaker, and therefore I beg to support.
Thank you. The Honorable Member for Kisauni.
Asante sana Madam Speaker kunipa fursa kuweza kuchangia mswada huu. Nichukue nafasi pia kuwaombea nafasi ya pili wale watoto wetu wa kike ambao wanapata ajali ya kuwa na ujauzito. Ni vyema asiachwe nje, apewe nafasi aweze kurudi, aendelee na masomo yake. Na vile vile mswada huu unaelekea kwamba utahitaji fedha, kwa sababu ikiwa itahitaji kwamba kuwe na majengo ya kuweza kuangalia watoto katika shule hizo, itahitaji fedha, na ikiwa itahitaji fedha ni kwamba huu mswada utachukua muda mrefu sana. Lakini Mheshimiwa Zamzam ameleta mswada ambao utakuwa rahisi kwa kuwalinda watoto wetu wa kike. Kwa hivyo imekaa tu pale kwa table office, haikuji. Hiyo sioni shida, sioni tatizo liko wapi. Na hiyo ingetuletea njia rahisi ya kuwasaidia watoto wa kike. Yeye Mheshimiwa Zamzam anasaidia, ameonyesha moyo, anasaidia watoto zaidi 350 kule sehemu ya kaunti ya Mombasa walipata ujauzito. Kwa hivyo tunaomba kwamba hiyo yake iharakishwe iweze kuja. Na vile vile watoto wetu wa kike tunasema mujistiri, ndio watoto wetu, msije mkapata hii mambo ya mimba za mapema, haziwasaidii. Kwa hivyo mimi Madam Speaker nimesimama kusupport kwamba watoto wa kike wapewe second chance, lakini pia wajistiri ili wasije ili jambo likawa la mazoea. Na hii yote sababishwa na mgoka. Lakini tunawatakia kula la heri. Mungu awabariki, waweze kujistiri ili waendelee na masomo mpaka wafike vyuo vikuu. Asante sana Madam Speaker.
The The Honorable Member for Marakwet West.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I rise to support this very progressive piece of legislation, that is the Care and Protection of Child Parents Bill 2023. Honorable Speaker, this group of parents, what you call child parents, have for a long period of time been neglected by the society. Honorable Speaker, it is time that their fundamental rights are taken into account in order to protect them. Honorable Speaker, these are parents who are below the age of 18 years. These are parents who have born children at that particular age. Honorable Speaker, this group of parents have suffered discrimination and abuse from the Kenyan community. Honorable Speaker, this bill, of course, when it comes to the second reading, I will propose certain amendments that will go into the substance of the bill. Honorable Speaker, this bill further goes to provide what you call counseling and support services for those children for those mothers who have born children below and are below the age of 18 years. Honorable Speaker, this element of counseling and support is very, very vital and important so that we nurture that young parent. Honorable Speaker, also the issue of confidentiality. Under clause 14 of the bill, it provides very clearly that every case of a child who falls pregnant in an institution of basic education and training shall be handled by the management of the institution in a manner that ensures confidentiality. These young children who are parents, when they get pregnant at a young age, normally they're embarrassed, they are cajoled, and it is time that their rights are protected and the issue of pregnancy be made confidential. Honorable Speaker, under clause 15 of the bill, this is an area that we must look forward and propose an amendment to it. Honorable Speaker, as a lawyer yourself, if you read that clause very carefully, it says where it is determined that a person responsible for pregnancy. Honorable Speaker, this is not right because at this stage, unless a paternity test is undertaken, you cannot determine at this stage whether someone is responsible for the pregnancy or not. So I will propose an amendment to the effect that where it is suspected, because at this stage, the element of suspicion comes in. It is only during paternity that a matter is determined with finality whether that person is the parent of the child or not. So, Honorable Speaker, that is an area that we must be able to look at carefully so that we also protect the interests of that would be father of that child. Honorable Speaker, under Article 50 of the Constitution, we have something called presumption of innocence until proven guilty. So at this stage, that would be father should be presumed innocent until proven guilty by a competent court of law. Honorable Speaker, the bill goes further to protect the interests of that child by subjecting that suspect under this particular proposed law to certain legal processes. Honorable Speaker, the Teachers' Code of Regulations is very clear on how to handle issues of teachers who are suspected of impregnating students. And the law is very clear on that, and I believe, Honorable Speaker, this clause should be read alongside the Teachers Service Commission Act of 2012 plus the Code of Regulation of Teachers of 2015, because it cannot be read in isolation. As it is here, Honorable Speaker, it is not determinate, it is not certain, it has not provided a clear framework on how to handle the issue of teachers. But I believe that we should have a clause that this law should be read together, of course, with the Teacher Service Commission Act and the Code of Regulations. Honorable Speaker, on the issue of readmission, young children, young girls who have been out of school courtesy of pregnancy have had it difficult going back to school. schools have been reluctant to readmit young girls who got pregnant and therefore were not able to complete their studies. Now that we have a legal framework, we have a specific law that provides, that mandates our institutions from readmitting those young girls who have been out of school out because of pregnancies. Honorable Speaker, finally, I support the establishment of care centers. Normally, most parents are not willing to embrace. When I say parents, I mean the mother of the child parents are not at times willing to take care of these young children who have been born. So, Honorable Speaker, the issue of caregivers is very important, is very vital, so that children born by young parents, or what you call the child parents, can be taken care of by at their care centers. So, Honorable Speaker, this is very progressive, and I support this bill, and I call upon the members of Parliament that when it comes to the second reading, let us give the necessary amendments and pass the bill as it is. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Tindiret, Honourable Julius Melly.
Madam Speaker, I rise to support this bill, and I want first of all to commend the co-sponsor and the Senate for coming out with such a very progressive bill, more specifically and tailored to the parent-child. Madam Speaker, many people in this country do not know the existence of parent-children, and these are children who are underage, who are actually less than 18 years, and they are as young as 10 years old. Madam Speaker, this bill seeks to really bring into perspective who a young parent is, or who is a child parent. The bill seeks, among many others, to first of all tell the society that there is a parent who is not of age, who is giving birth, who has a child. The two of them are not of age. Two, it also goes ahead to really note that this child parent has a right to go to school, has a right to medical care. A number of them, when they are giving birth, their body systems are still very weak. They need a lot of medical attention. They need to undergo clinical checkups every other time. But as the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics has just pointed out, majority of the child parents are actually in rural areas, in pastoral communities, in households where the income is very low. This bill actually seeks to really bring awareness and to ensure that this particular child parent rights are well taken care of, as stated in the Constitution. That one, the child parent has to have proper medical care. The child parent has to undergo a lot of support socially, psychologically, and economically. This is a child who gets pregnant when she's in primary school. This is a child who gets expectant and having a baby when she's less than 12 or 13 or 14 years old. And every other time, she is actually stigmatized, and she's not even allowed to be heard. As the bill indicates, some schools, majority of them, do actually take forced pregnancy tests on these children. And immediately they are discovered, they are actually stigmatized. They are ostracized by the school heads, by parents, by communities, and they are actually shunned. This is the time now we need to take up and own. This is a serious problem. 15% of all the girls have either become pregnant, have either lost a child. That particular percentage, Madam Speaker, is very high and alarming. It is as a result of this bill, therefore, that the county governments are actually being alerted and told to come up with ways on how to stop these particular child, the young pregnancies, and more specifically, the child parent. After the child has given birth, the parents are supposed to know that is not the end of their education. they are supposed to be given permission to go to school. The parents of the parent child, who are the grandparents of the young child, are supposed to take care of this child. Take care of her, allow the mother child to go to school, finish her education, and therefore realize her dreams as a Kenyan. Madam Speaker, this bill further goes on to ensure that we established centers which will take care of these children in areas where the real parents are not able to do that. That's why county governments have been roped in and are informed that these particular children are supposed to be taken care of and allowed to continue with their lives. So this bill is very important, Madam Speaker. However, I want to note that the bill with the establishment of county centers is a money bill. And I want to note that this is a very important bill that this House needs to really come up with ways on making sure that it is implemented, it becomes the law of the land, and by extension, it is going to make sure that many of the children dropouts that we have in this society are actually taken care of. Lastly, Madam Speaker, the child of the child parent also is of concern. He is a citizen of this country. Whereas the mother is of underage, this child has a right to be taken care of medically, to undergo all the medical, the postnatal medical services, taken through the clinics, taken through the medical treatment, and be allowed also to grow up, because if the child parent is not assisted, she will engage in child labor. And by extension, her child or the child of the child parent will now not have the necessary services of good health, going to education, and even going to preschool. So this bill is actually good for us, and I ask the House to support it. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Narok North, Honourable Agnes Pareo, and Honourable Members, I'm allowing members to ventilate on this issue because we shall not rule on the issue raised by Honourable T.J. Kajwang of Ruaraka today, but until we get the feedback and notes from the Budget Committee. So I'm hoping that Honorable Kemei, member for Kericho, you're taking notes, and then we shall be able to put the question at that time. But right now, let's just allow members to ventilate. Honorable Member for Narok North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to add my voice to this bill. And this is a bill that takes care or looks into problems that our young girls below 18 go through after dropping from school as a result of pregnancies. And this is a subject that is in my heart because I do rescue these girls, and I know what they go through. These girls, after involving themselves with the early sex, they find themselves pregnant, and some of them are confused and don't even know who they are, and they don't know where to run to. Because some of these parents don't take responsibility of taking care of these girls. So there is need to have a bill like this one that will make sure that has provided to provide a framework for the protection of the rights set out under Article 53(1) and C and D of the Constitution in relation to child parents. Because these girls become parents, yet their age is not enough for them to take care of these girls, their children, because they are confused. And the bill will provide a framework through which the expectant girl child and a child parent can realize their rights to education and at the same time ensure the care and protection of his or her child we need to offer education to these girls because education is power. And when you give a child education, this child will realize her rights and can know how to earn a living for her child. So I think it has come at the right time that we need to support these girls so that they can have an opportunity, a second opportunity, to make sure that they have realized their goals.
because it doesn't mean that because she's pregnant and she has dropped from school, she cannot be who she wanted to be. So we need to give them another chance by the government supporting these girls and making sure that they get a time to go back to school and they are supported, and they need a lot of counseling because some of them are not sure whether they did the right thing or no. And their parents sometimes force these girls to run away from their homes because they look at them like they are a burden. So for me, I support this bill that will give this child a second chance of going to school, and that cannot deny them their right. Being pregnant cannot deny the right of these girls being who they wanted to be, and they can still achieve their goals. Thank you.
The Honorable Member for Suba North, Honorable Millie Odhiambo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this
Honorable
opportunity.
Rosa, please allow Honorable Millie Odhiambo to speak.
Madam Speaker, there's just a lot of excitement.
Much obliged, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, there's a lot of excitement in relation to ongoing issues relating to the finance bill. And as you know, our party is having a parliamentary group meeting. I know that your party had a parliamentary group meeting in the morning. And I'm sure the party will give a position after that. But I'm glad at least people are listening to Kenyans, which is a good thing. Madam Speaker, I just want to say that in principle, I support this bill, but I just want to point out some certain issues around it. And Madam Speaker, even as I'm speaking, I would want to urge Honorable Kaluma to listen to me, because he normally purports to know things about children's issues, even if he's my uncle, but I am an expert in this area more than him. And
Glad you
I would
added
want
the word purports.
You are helping him, Madam Speaker. Have you given him or I proceed?
Allow Honorable Millie to prosecute her matter first.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I will proceed.
No.
I will proceed,
Kaluma,
Madam Speaker.
I
have said that in principle, I support this bill. However, I just want to comment on certain issues that also relate to some of the things that members have said. And that is that even though I support this bill in principle, the architecture of this bill is challenging. The reason why I want to say the architecture of this bill is challenging, Madam Speaker, number one, is the government normally has a policy on how you legislate on certain issues. And in the children's sector in the last parliament, I brought a child justice bill, and I was encouraged to collapse the child justice bill into the Children Act, because in the past we had almost 66 pieces of legislation relating to children. The government formed a task force that was headed by retired Chief Justice F. War that agreed that we come up with one law on children so that we don't give lawyers a difficult task. When I was representing children, when I was the director of the Cradle, it meant if I wanted to deal with adoption, I had to look for the Adoption Act. If I wanted to deal with the issues of orphans, I would look at the Orphans and Vulnerable Children's Act. If I wanted to look at, there were over 66 pieces of legislation. That doesn't mean that what is provided in this law is wrong. It is actually excellent. But the architecture is not good. Should we kill the bill because of this? Perhaps not. And especially because a member has put in too much effort. But it talks to an executive that is asleep. The executive should advise members, and not only the executive, but also the parliamentary office. And in this case, it is the Senate Legal Office, should have offered guidance. The fact that members want to bring bills doesn't mean you bring it in any format. What they should have done, Madam Speaker, is bring an amendment to the Children Act So that all that is provided here is in the Children Act. Madam Speaker, all that is contained here is what we call children in need of care and protection. And if you actually look at this bill carefully, it contains primarily two major issues: readmission of children who are pregnant into school and protection of children who have given birth. It is not even dealing with the criminal justice aspect, which is covered under the Sexual Offences Act. And I'm saying in principle, I support this act, but I wish it was done differently. The honorable member has gone quite a long distance, but I'm encouraging the House leadership, both Senate and National Assembly, to the legal departments, take your work seriously. Because the fact that members want to move in, you are the ones who are experts as lawyers, advise them how to do this. And the reason why I'm putting back again to the executive, the same way you asked me to move my child justice bill, which was even in substance, had more critical issues, but we collapsed it and made it smaller as a chapter in the Children Act. Because as a policy, the government had agreed that we collapse all children matters into one. It appears that there is no longer any policy relating to children, because if you look at our budget, for instance, right now, you see we are putting a lot of money into institutionalizing children. Yet the government policy has been against institutionalization. What are we doing? We are building centers to institutionalize children. It means we have no clue what our policy as a government is in relation to institutionalization of children. That is also appearing here. And I want to encourage the president that as soon as he's done with the challenges relating to the finance bill and his deputy, can he then work on the issue of ensuring that there is a clear policy that emanates from the executive to legislation. I've said this in this house, and it might be taken lightly, but in reality, that speaks to a government that is dysfunctional. The right hand does not know what the left hand does. Even when it is private members' bill, it must follow the policy of the government of the day. And that is why, for me, for instance, even though I wanted my child justice bill, the government policy of Uhuru at that time was towards one bill. I let mine die. So that is a reality we have to deal with. Other than that, Madam Speaker, I want to encourage the members. You know, when I'm listening sometimes to what I hear the members saying, I feel very sad when I hear members saying that, you know, in our culture, girls are getting married at 17. And my brother from Kibra, I think he has already left. But I have to invite him to the Parliamentary Caucus on Children and Parliamentarians for Global Action, which are human rights organization for parliamentarians globally. I chair both networks in Kenya. And as a country, we have progressed over the years. We have actually ratified the Convention on the Rights of the Child. We have raised standards on protecting our children, that we cannot talk because of men's libido that we lower the age for our children. Madam Speaker, in fact, nowadays it's the opposite. People are amused that I'm sharing that on this finance bill. There is a young man who has written to me when people are writing and telling me, Madam Speaker, stop, make sure the finance bill does not pass. Make sure the finance bill does not pass. A young man instead is writing to me that I am young but I have inches, Madam Speaker. So it is actually the reverse. It's the young men who are now very keen on looking for retirees like me. I don't mean I've retired in my work, but I've retired in that other sector. Telling me about inches. What do I do with inches, Madam Speaker? But what I'm saying is, even for those ones, we must protect our young boys from people, I think we call them coggers or something, who are maybe older, but may want to take advantage of young boys who are young and poor and want to take advantage by giving them money. But in this instance, when a girl is below 18. A boy is below 18. We presume that legally they cannot have sex. And the only challenge we're having under the Sexual Offences Act is ensuring that when they have sex with each other, we treat them as children in need of care and protection. But this is actually dealing with a civil issue emanating from a criminal act. And so, because of the honorable member who has put in so much effort, I will support it, but I would wish that the architecture was done better. I would have spoken more, Madam Speaker, but because of time, just ask those, some of us who are experts in these areas. We can help you and support you. I support, but I wish we would change the architecture, and I'll bring amendments in relation to some of the issues I've seen herein. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Millie Odhiambo. And I think the Honorable Member for Kericho, Honorable Kemei, I hope you're taking notes. This is a very important issue on the architecture, and I think it's something that can be discussed at the committee level. I'm glad that Honorable Millie has raised it. She knows we have come a long way with the Children's Act together. So I think do liaise with her. She has a lot of information and knowledge on this particular point. The Honorable Member for Homa Bay Town.
I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
I'm going to come to you.
Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Member.
Thank you. Honorable Speaker, it is in very rare occasions that we agree with the Honorable Millie Odhiambo, who is my niece. But Honorable Speaker, today I agree with Honorable Millie Odhiambo, except where she says I purport to know a lot about children's matters. Honorable Speaker, had intervened because unknown to Honorable Millie, I was taught by the Honorable Speaker law. The one area of law you specialized in at the University of Nairobi and you taught me was the subject of children and the law. And Honorable Millie does not know that inspired by the depth of your teaching, I went ahead and did my master's, specializing on, among others, the law relating to protection of the children. And that is what I would disaccount from Honorable Millie. The idea that she was besmirching not just my knowledge, but also the expertise of the best expert on matters, children, who happens to be our speaker now. But we forgive her because she has spoken the language I desire to speak. Honorable Speaker, I had a meeting with our First Lady a short while back. And it was a meeting which went for over 3 hours. I was touched by the passion of the First Lady on matters children. And Honorable Speaker, what I want to confirm to the House is that we have a First Lady who is looking at how we can deal with matters of children and adequately protect them. For the first time, it may have passed the notice of honorable members here, but there is a budget line under what we call Children's of the Nation, which is a new program of the national government to be implemented by the First Lady. And the Children of the Nation program, Honorable Speaker, remember our First Lady was previously focused on women, Joiwu and others. The First Lady is henceforth going to be very focused on matters concerning children. And I was confirming to the House that when you looked at our budget lines very clearly, you saw an item called Children of the Nation program under the office of the First Lady. And that I'm saying this, Honorable Speaker, to confirm that matters concerning children are matters which concern the leadership of our nation, and more so our current mother of the nation. Honorable Speaker, you would also remember the speech of His Excellency the President at Safari Park during the launch of the G7 to G16 caucus. The President requested that we focus on the matter of teenage pregnancies, early marriages, FGM and all those consequences. I'm happy the First Lady picked it up And of course, I want to thank Parliament for budgeting for it so that we can take it seriously. Honorable Speaker, leaving that background aside, let me now speak to the matters you taught me. Honorable Speaker, this bill is very good in substance. And I can tell you I'm very happy we are having clear framework in terms of how we need to establish, these child care centers, both at the county and how they should be supervised. I can tell you in Bomet a short while back, you remember somebody calling himself a philanthrope opened a children care center somewhere in Bomet. And what was happening there was that our children were being sodomized. Our children were being affected. And this is happening in so many institutions around. The minister, under whose docket matters children, fall, has said times without a number, Honorable Speaker, that a time has come when we need to consider whether we will need childcare institutions established by government and abolish these other ones, or what should be done. In fact, she recommended abolition. But Honorable Speaker, beyond the substance, let me say, this bill must be rejected by the National Assembly. Not because it provides or it makes bad provisions, but because it is not rightly placed. It is not rightly placed. Honorable Speaker, before we came with the current Marriage Act, we had a marriage law providing for Hindu marriages. We had a marriage law providing for civil marriages. We had African Tradition and Customary Marriages Act. We had the Muslims were under their Sharia law. And with your advice and teaching, you said, let us collapse all these laws into a single law dealing with marriage, so that even for practicing lawyers and for anybody who want to make references to know what the law in Kenya is about marriage, you pick the Marriage Act and all those forms and modes of marriages will be provided for there. Honorable Speaker, it is in that light, you remember, in the last parliament, I think it was in the 12th parliament, that we had the original Children's Act, but we had other issues concerning children in various piecemeal laws. And we made a decision, therefore, to collapse all these laws to the current Children's Act. It's a very comprehensive law. I am therefore requesting members of the National Assembly that we don't want to go back to a situation where instead of going into the Children's Act and picking a single statute, and it will be your Bible or Quran on all matters affecting children, which is the ideal position in terms of proper legislation and even legal practice across the world, you want to take us to a situation where we have the Children's Act dealing with all issues concerning the children. You go to the Constitution, Article 53, you read it, you leave it there. You pick a law just on care and protection of child parents. You pick another law on children with disability. You will pick another law on orphaned children. You will pick another law on children in the context of, criminal offenses, the Romeo and Juliet cases. You pick another law on children whose parents are in marriage. You pick another law on children whose children are not in marriage, single parents. We cannot go that way. And that would be the pathway, Honorable Speaker, to confusing the body of law relating to children. I therefore want to speak, and I know the mover is keenly listening. We want to send the mover to go and tell the proponent of the bill in the House of Senate that this is not about the merit of the bill, but we are rejecting this bill so that these good and noble provisions can be picked and an appropriate amendment brought into the Children's Act, and so that consistently we have one comprehensive law which speaks to all matters concerning children. Honorable Speaker, Honorable Millie has spoken to the issue of policy, and it is very important. I am happy she has done so. But I was praying that she's around so that I also tell her that just the same way you are saying we should have policy from government, let us also allow government, when they say we have a government policy on this law you are bringing or you are proposing as a private member, collapse it or wait for us to bring a law which is informed by that government policy. It has happened to a law being pushed by Honorable Millie here. I will now not speak about it because she has gone. Where the Attorney General has said, we have a policy on this, and on the basis of that policy, we have drafted a law which the Attorney General has proved, but the laws are still being pursued. I want to say that on account of the need for a single comprehensive law, Honorable Speaker, a Bible on matters concerning children, let us collapse this bill, and we would be urging so, and we would urge the proponent before this floor and the proponent in the Senate to sit together and pick these good provisions so that we don't lose them, but have them as amendment provisions to the Children's Act so that we don't scatter matters concerning children all over. Honorable Speaker, on account of those submissions, I allay any fears that we can do anything other than that which upholds Article 53 and protects our children, but to say that going by the need to securely provide and protect our children, we will reject this law, hoping if the proponent of this law does not pick it in and domicile it within the Children's Act, even us, Honorable Speaker, members will pick it and do so. It's not about...
Thank you very much, honorable members. I can see that I still have the honorable member for Moiben, the honorable member for Tarbo, the honorable member for Funyula. But allow me, honorable members, I will give you an opportunity, but allow me to go back to order number 5, which had been pending, and then we shall come back to those members who need to contribute to this matter. So we go back to order number 5, the Honorable Chairperson for the Finance Committee, Honorable Kimani Kuria.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
You can lay your paper, and then we shall resume debate on the matter.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House today, Tuesday, the 18th of June, 2024. The report on the Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning on its consideration of the Finance Bill, National Assembly Bill number 30 of 2024. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. I think, honorable members, we can now resume debate. The honorable member for Funyula. We shall resume debate, and then we shall proceed to the honorable member for Tarbo, then the honorable member for Moiben. You may proceed, member for Funyula.
Yeah. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for this opportunity to also contribute on the Senate bill, the Care and Protection of Child Parents Bill 2023. And I do so, Honorable Speaker, first of all, as a father of girls, and also a father of very many other girls. I also do so, Honorable Speaker, I also do so that when I got an opportunity to be elected a member of parliament for Funyula in 2017, we have had to encounter this kind of scenario and to have had to be very ingenious on how to deal with this matter. Honorable Speaker, perusing through this bill, Honorable Speaker, brings out some very salient issues that are becoming very common and is permeating our modern society. And it's a matter that I'm afraid this particular bill only perpetuates the problem, does not even seem to try to solve the root cause of the problem. Honorable Speaker, for us to have the kind of scenario we have, to even contemplate having a bill of this nature, is an admission that parenting in this country has failed. We are trying to legalize a matter that is purely a moral matter, a parenting matter, a religious matter. It confirms our fears that the entire ecosystem that takes care of the children has collapsed. The church has failed, the parents have failed, the community has failed, the entire kinship system of the family has failed. So therefore, we are trying to solve a problem using legislation, a problem that can also be solved elsewhere. Second, Honorable Speaker, this bill is good, it has got very good intention. But unfortunately, Honorable Speaker, going through this bill seems to be very short of useful content, seems to be basically a cut and paste of matters that can be dealt administratively and the matters of policy. Honorable Speaker, I also want to join my colleagues TJ Kajwang that reading through this bill is pure and straightforward a money bill. And the Constitution of Kenya is very clear how we generate a money bill. And as we have clearly said, we'll have an opportunity at the right time, the substantive speaker or the Budget and Appropriation Committee to give us guidance on that matter. Thirdly, Honorable Speaker, this bill purports to take away the functions that are already domiciled in various acts of parliament, that are already available in various administrative offices. Issues of children are adequately and elaborately contained in the Children's Act. Issues how to deal with the children who want to go to school are clearly contained in the Basic Education Act. One wonders why. Issues to do with the crimes and all those kind of things. Some already dealt with in the Sexual Offences Act. Some already dealt with the Penal Act. I do not know what intention are we going to create. Are we going to create another problem that does not even exist? Honorable Speaker, I am a Catholic, and our Catholic faith and way is very clear. Where I come from, we have ways how to deal with the criminals, child indiscipline, and truants. This is a matter. The honorable ladies who are here, the fathers who are here, to allow the state to cringe in your area is an admission of a failed society. It's a matter we can deal with at society level. Honorable Speaker, a danger looms in this bill. This bill purports to give the county government powers to supervise the national government. Basic education is mandated in the national government. Asking the CEC in charge of, to administer the bill, CEC in charge of whichever education at the county level to superimpose and instruct county director of education, we're already walking into the murky areas. And that's why I want to join my colleague Millie, that yes, we empathize with the efforts expended by the sponsor of this bill in the Senate. But honestly, here in this case, Honorable Speaker, our legal team, our drafting team, have laid down the sponsor, have laid down Senate, have laid down Parliament, and have laid down the people of Kenya. Members of Parliament, whether a senator or a member of Parliament, are not experts in legislative drafting. And that's why the office is populated with adequate number of technical people who ought to advise that the way the bill is drafted, it's impossible to implement. Honorable Speaker, this bill is impossible to implement. Honorable Speaker, there is a policy now to abolish children's homes. There is a policy